Hey guys, Paul here. So I've been going back and forth like for the past hour about how exactly I want to talk about this topic and make this video. So I decided to just finally hit record and say, screw it, we'll go with it. So this video is basically about the disenfranchised Yu-Gi-Oh player, or as I've kind of colloquially been calling it, the Yu-Gi-Oh zombie. And the fact that, Konami is not the perfect answer to all of your Yu-Gi-Oh problems and that you have to kind of solve them yourself. So what do I mean by all this? Well, basically, I have encountered in increasing numbers these past few years the sort of Yu-Gi-Oh zombie, which is a player who is dissatisfied with the state of Yu-Gi-Oh for some reason or another, and there are a billion reasons why they can be. Just for a bit of an anecdote, I was traveling to an event like I'll say like 3, 4 months ago. Happened to go by a card shop in the area. This was several hours away, and as we're walking up to the card shop, I see two other guys leaving the card shop having this conversation just between themselves about like how like oh man, this is like so some stupid thing about Yu-Gi-Oh they don't like, right? Like it's just like, oh, this is so dumb, but that's how Yu-Gi-Oh is now. They just completely ruined it, and that I can't believe this, whatever, right? And I think they were talking about maybe the way that games end really fast, like turn two, the game's over or something. And I realized that that's something that I actually hear at a lot of card shops and on a lot of online forums and kind of just everywhere, comment sections of Facebook and Twitter posts and everything, where there's this sort of there's this agreed upon and yet unspoken dissatisfaction with the game. Whether it's the format, whether it's the price, whether it's something else about Konami, whether it's the people or the metagame or whatever, Yu-Gi-Oh is ruined today, and it was better back in the good old days. What exactly are those good old days? It could be a few years ago when you liked Toss format. It could have been, in 2010 in Edison format, or it was GOAT, or it was kind of the vague idea of whatever Yu-Gi-Oh on the playground was back in 2002. And so basically, I have found that this group of player kind of can't really be satisfied, right? They think that maybe Yu-Gi-Oh was ruined when synchros were introduced, or Xyz, or pendulums, or links, or whatever. Or maybe it was hand traps that ruined things, floodgates that ruined things. And also, there's kind of this idea that, like, if Konami would just fix this one thing, Yu-Gi-Oh would be fine. People are sort of waiting for the ban list, right? A few months pass, we haven't had a ban list. People get angry at Konami because they're like, well, where's the ban list, Konami? You're letting this horrible format, like kill the game, and it's so terrible and it feels awful to go to events. And the ban list comes out and people aren't happy with it. And, they're like, what? You didn't even hit the problem, or I can't believe you hit this but not this, or why did you hit my favorite deck? And it reads to me almost as though people are sort of waiting for this magical fix to Yu-Gi-Oh that's never quite coming. Now, that isn't to say that, Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't see constant improvements, right? Like, I think that there are things that have. I made a video recently about how I think, like, oh, Konami seems to be maybe easing up on printing practices, or maybe they're, like, hitting floodgates, which a lot of people don't seem to like, or they're hitting the Omni negates, and that seems to be something that people don't like. But overall, there's not going to be, like, a ban list that, sort of pleases everyone. And maybe more so than that, there's never going to really be a ban list that, like, reverts the game back to what you liked the most, the format that you wanted back, whether that's 2013, 2017, 2008, I don't know. There's never really going to be a ban list that like fixes all the problems. It can't fix all the floodgates, all the hand traps, all the negates, all the long combos, whatever it is that you don't like, whatever toxic thing you feel is ruining the game. No one ban list can quite fix it. And so it feels bad then when I hear players who feel like they're really not enjoying the game and they feel like they're kind of on the fringes, like they feel disenfranchised. Their favorite mechanic doesn't work anymore. I mean, I hear this from Pendulum players where they're like, wow, Electromite's banned. Konami seems to hate Pendulums. They don't want to give us any of this stuff back. And the new Pendulum archetypes aren't even Pendulum archetypes or whatever. I hear people who, complain about so many things. And it can almost reach a point where it's like, you have to find your own fun in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think that to rely on the idea that Konami is going to come in and fix anything with this game in the way that you want them to is just unrealistic, right? Like they're gonna make ban lists, but they're probably not all gonna be like 100% 10 out of 10 bangers for you specifically, and that applies to everybody. Also, the ban list isn't going to help you like suddenly be the best player at your locals. The best players at your card shop are probably running the best decks, and I know that there's a lot of discontent around like the idea of people playing the meta, right? You're all meta sheep and you're all playing the same thing, and that's what ruined Yu-Gi-Oh! But the truth is, that's been something that's existed for ages, right? Like people have always played the best strategies when they're available if you were actually playing in tournaments. And there's the whole kind of concept of like, the playground Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta didn't really exist. It's something that I take some issue with because I do think people like remember what Playground Yu-Gi-Oh was for them, and I think that was real and valid. But there was always a competitive scene as well, so it feels like it's something where we cannot go back in time and make a perfect Yu-Gi-Oh! So what's the next best thing to do? Well, I've got a few options, and one of them is going to be a little bit harsh, but we'll start with the easier ones, which is first of all, you can accept it all, right? Like, even if you don't like the way that modern Yu Gi Oh works, or you don't like the current kind of batch of cards, or how Konami's running things, you can just have an optimistic glass half full approach and play a deck that came out recently that you do like, and try to push that to Master Rank 1 in Master Duel, or maybe try to get a top with it at a regional, even if it feels difficult. And you can embrace, the hand traps or the board breakers or the combos or whatever thing you don't like about Yu-Gi-Oh! Find a way to counter it or find a way to learn about it or whatever. And that alone can be fine for you. Conversely, you can sort of find your own fun in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think this is the number one solution I suggest to people is if you don't like how the game is going, play an alternative format. Play GOAT, play Edison, play Trinity, play Domain, play whatever. Play any number of alternate formats. You can try out Speed Duel, you can try out Duel Links if you haven't already, try out Master Duel if you haven't already. Try something that you have not played because if the traditional TCG is not doing it for you, you don't need to, sit here and like force yourself to enjoy it because it's just not really worth the stress when another ban list goes by and and you don't like it, or another card is expensive and you don't like it. Like if a card's expensive, like Wanted, Seeker, Sinful Spoils, buy some proxies, play at a kitchen table with your friends. Boom, easy. And then you can wait for the reprints and play it then. I think that you kind of have to like find your own fun in the sense of like, what do you and your friends agree is most fun to play? Do you want to play with hand traps or not? Find an agreement with that, right? Do something there. And then the final solution that I've been I argue, I go back and forth with like whether or not I want to say this because I realize like I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh influencer or whatever, and so I shouldn't be saying for people to do this. But take a break or quit. If you don't like Yu-Gi-Oh, don't feel the need to like absolutely hang on to this game forever and let it kind of be like live in your head and make you angry without really there being like a solution or a way forward. So if you truly do not like the printing practices, if you truly do not like the format and you just feel that Yu-Gi-Oh is not for you anymore, then I think take a break from it. That can be like a 1 month break, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and maybe you'll come back and find that it's more fun or something's perhaps been solved or addressed and you just what it really was is a you thing, like you needed some time away from this game. It can stress you out when your favorite deck isn't getting support and the ban list isn't doing what you want and the decks are expensive. Okay, great, invest in another hobby, find something else to do. Or honestly, if you really feel like Yu-Gi-Oh has gotten that bad, you can even quit. Now, I don't suggest quitting. Obviously, I want people playing Yu-Gi-Oh, sure, but I don't think that you should put yourself through something that you don't like, dealing with a company you don't like, or a game that you feel, just disillusioned with, just because there's like a sunk cost fallacy or something going on. Like, you can always quit Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm not saying that that's like the answer, but just that I have found more and more players in these last few years who seem like they just don't actually enjoy it much anymore. And the final thing I have to say about this, because I'm sure some people have been like thinking it as they've watched the video, is I feel this way sometimes. Sometimes I feel like the disenfranchised Yu-Gi-Oh player. I mean, I get on here and complain about Yu-Gi-Oh like every other day on this channel. And like there are things that I really wish would go back to the way that I would prefer them to be, or that the ban list would just hit the stuff that I wanted to hit, or Konami would just, implement these new printing practices and stuff like that, or they would communicate in this way. And I've kind of had to come to terms with the fact that the way I want Yu-Gi-Oh to go isn't necessarily the right way, and it's certainly not the way that it will go. I'm not the person making calling the shots. And so the best thing that I can really do is find my own ways to enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh. I've got kind of a house format and group of friends that I play with. I play a lot of Master Duel, and I actually really enjoy that. And I still find just a lot of joy in kind of exploring old school parts of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's been a really fun way to distract myself. I've been playing a lot of old school games like Dark Duel Stories, Forbidden Memories, Sacred Cards, Eternal Duelist Soul, all those like old school games. Been really loving those. They've been fun. And it's been a great way to kind of pull my mind away from just here's what's wrong with Yu-Gi-Oh! Here's what's wrong with Yu-Gi-Oh! Here's what's wrong with Yu-Gi-Oh! So I get it, right? I'm like, in a way making this video is like kind of hypocritical. It's something that I too am like working through. So I want to hear what people have to say about this. Are you one of those Yu-Gi-Oh zombies? Are you one of these players who feels disenfranchised with the game? What is it that kind of keeps you tied into it? And have you considered maybe alternatives that like to things different Yu-Gi-Oh things to engage in to take your mind off of it? Or what would you suggest for somebody who's maybe going through this same issue? I'd love to hear down below in the comments. And without further ado, I'll see you guys next one. Fast turn.